Hi there to Gary North. Always a pleasure. Always good to see you. And Guati, hello as well. Always good to see you. Please feel free to ask me anything you want. It is the 24th of June, 2023. I'm doing this. So, yes, this is me, James, and hello. Sorry about that lighting issue there. Okay. Obviously, it's a bit late at the moment here in the UK, so I'm going to be doing an ASMR broadcast for you tonight. This video is really just to follow on from the previous ones, or the one the other day, which was about the sighting of David Lynch filming at a restaurant in West Hollywood. Sorry, I was just listening there. I could hear a plane overhead. It's probably a sign, that one might be. That thumbnail is the double R, who the restaurant Tweeds, which stands in for the double R, is having some kind of event in the next month with an opening for, or an unveiling of the new double R sign on it, neon. So if you're in town, go along and have a look. I don't know if that's an indication that they will be filming there more, because I suppose it's just, they're trying to present it as the double R, really. So people know it's associated with that TV show, Twin Peaks. Who knows? Well, I've got an insect bite on my leg. Feels quite... just rubbing in some cream into it now, in case you're wondering what I'm doing with my hand here. So anyway, to get back to all this kind of discussion of when, where, and how are they filming Twin Peaks or whatever Lynch is doing. Oh, hello there, Millie. I've not seen you on this chat for quite a long time, which I know that was because of my toxicity, which somebody pointed out this week, towards all females associated with the show. So I would like to just make this also in an apology video for my toxicity towards all females, either on the show or also in the chat. And I will say it was completely deliberate on my part, and I'm sorry. I was a bad person. But anyway, more importantly, in terms of about all this kind of news, and more importantly, it is just good to see you in the chat, Millie. And I appreciate it. But I think in terms of, looking for signs, whether it's flickering neon lights or signs or anything like this, I don't know if they were installing some kind of special road sign that goes from red to green and everything. I would take that as more of a clear sign. And, in northbound Snoqualmie, and if it constantly stayed on green, I would say, yes, they are filming Twin Peaks now. Because, that would be saying basically, symbolically, green is the way ahead, green, go. Who cares if it causes some, traffic accidents? At least it would be a sign. And I think many people would agree with me that 6 years waiting after the return is just too long. So that's just an idea. If Lynch and Sabrina, etc., want to go with it, then just please give me credit. And I just want to say hello to Millie again. How are you? The quietness of the lack of response has sometimes really unnerved me to the point where I become almost speechless. But as I said tonight, this is an ASMR discussion because it is like after 1 o'clock in the morning here. So to get back to the post initial on Twitter by a young woman who basically is working in Hollywood, I would say, and involved in sort of like not an influencer, but she's a motivational type of person. I don't know exactly what she does, but I've seen for sure that, for instance, I was looking at people that she knows on her Facebook and things like that, and some of them might have been working for, DreamWorks, companies like this, animation studios. So I would say that she was involved somewhat in Hollywood, if not actually being, she's not Kathleen Kennedy or Steven Spielberg, no. So that tweet was fairly convincing, where she just was in a restaurant and she said, and David Lynch is filming and they've cordoned off most of the restaurant, but we can still eat here in this little bit that she was in. So it's a bit of a strange tweet, perhaps, but it doesn't strike me as anything particularly, made up or like she's just trying to concoct a story. In terms of looking into who she is and everything again, she has herself suffered a form of cancer in recent years, so that leads me to think it's fairly unlikely that she'd be out and about in West Hollywood or going to this rather nice restaurant and making stuff like that up, bearing in mind the seriousness of her, life as a whole. But I mean, this is kind of I'm going into private information about people, but the only reason I'm mentioning this kind of thing is because I just don't think they'll ever. And I don't think anything I'm saying is sort of pushing it into complete immorality or anything. Anyway, it is a bit late, Phantom Cooper, but I went to sleep earlier for a while, and so now I'm up, but we don't know what he might be filming or whether he was even filming or, what he was filming, of course, as you're saying. So she probably couldn't see if the whole thing was partitioned off. Maybe she was told it was David Lynch. It might not have been. So therefore, she was given the wrong information. If it was the right information, then they wouldn't want any of this to be out there circulating. And one person responded in a tweet with, yes, he's filming a new feature. And they could have just been writing that flippantly, but who knows? I tried to write to them and didn't get any response. The way in which it became more interesting was via social media, where things seemed to go a certain route, as if it was quite deliberately trying to shut down the rumors through a specific source of the writer Martha Nochimson, who wrote the book in 1997, The Passion of David Lynch, and another one called David Lynch Swerves. And she's got another one coming out which will cover The Return. And she said that she didn't state that she knows. She just said he isn't filming anything now. Someone mentioned that he may be filming something secretly. She said he's not filming anything secretly. I made a joke in response to Martha saying, you're looking into your crystal ball. Like the thing that, I'm referring obviously to the scene with Audrey and Charlie. And I don't know, I can't imagine that she probably found that particularly funny, because it's me insinuating that she can see the future, or that she can pick up this information through a crystal ball, as in, how does she know any of this stuff in the first place? Even if she was in constant contact with David Lynch or calling him once a year, how can she rely on any information he's given her about when he's filming or anything like this? Why would he tell her in the first place? Surely if Lynch himself is so loath to leak anything and always wants to keep the secret alive, that kind of thing, the mystery, I mean, then why would he just sort of casually say, oh yeah, I'm definitely not filming anything at the moment, Martha, in any, say, behind the scenes interviews they've had? And how can she trust him in the first place? She's a writer in America, but she doesn't live next door to Lynch. She doesn't live with him, like he's got 2 wives or something, as far as I'm aware. And so when I wrote to her, have you been looking in your crystal ball, Martha, and everything, I sort of put in the message how much I loved her books and how much I'm looking forward to her next one and everything like this, which is I'm not lying. But I was trying to be, I do really want to have a look at it. I've read the first 2 that she did on Lynch and Twin Peaks and etc. But I didn't want my message to seem too disrespectful, so I hope she didn't take it that way. But I think, really, like, let's look at it with some perspective. Why should anybody, like her, for instance, be particularly bothered if a fan is just lurking around or making jokes about, oh, well, we've heard so many rumors, how do we know who to trust? And what have you got there in your crystal ball to tell us, please? And Charlie in Twin Peaks said that he didn't have a crystal ball. She assured me in a message, rather briskly, I think she was not best pleased with me, that, she's not looking in a crystal ball. She didn't actually confirm that she didn't have one. So I made a post about this on the Instagram account for Damn Good Coffee Time. Somebody tagged Kyle MacLachlan. I was looking at it saying, were you there and things. I don't really think he's going to respond to that. But it's sort of interesting that nobody from the Lynch camp, in terms of actors or Sabrina or, well, I suppose it could be Peter Deming, his editor, maybe he could say something. No, or, of course, as it was back in 2013, with Jennifer Lynch, she actually made a tweet which was saying, no Twin Peaks is happening, basically, This is the original tweet, by the way, just in case anybody's not seen it. For instance, like Millie out there. Not had any reports of any actors spotted with Lynch, Gary, I'm afraid. I mean, this is a very straightforward tweet where she's just basically showing the food. I can't really read any particular inferences or clues there in what we're being shown in terms of anything related to Twin Peaks. It's sort of looks like it's got some fruit on it, whatever this dish is, but it's not cherry pie. And so she was only mentioning the David Lynch factor as one part of her post. It's not like she took a photo of the partitions or the blocking off of the restaurant, which would be more the sort of thing that would be copied and saved as an image and shared around everywhere. Like, this image doesn't really show us anything. It looks quite interesting to what they're eating. I mean, it looks a fantastic restaurant, this place, and it's actually apparently quite big, so it would be quite possible for them to have some of it blocked off, and then other people carry on doing other things around. So well, yeah, I mean, the weather reports, for instance, on the page Lynchland Gang, and only recently they just said, after this news came out and people were mentioning that, they sort of had a tendency to say that's because of this specific reason given, i.e. Angelo Badalamenti died, Lynch went to his funeral, and then he didn't feel like doing weather reports anymore. That was how it was written, quite bluntly, like that. And that kind of explanation, if someone was writing a biography of Lynch, then I don't think that would stand up in court. It's not particularly, many people would regard it as not particularly important when Lynch decided to stop doing the weather reports. But I think that the reason he stopped doing them is not just because of the fact that he had lost somebody who he'd worked so long with, and obviously was a great, a great friend of his, and he had a lot of affection for him. Doesn't follow on that someone would therefore stop doing a couple of minute weather report on a daily basis. Where is the connection? There's no connection whatsoever. That's just a wild kind of assumption based on really nothing, in fact, I would say. You could just as easily make up a idea that Lynch wanted to carry on doing the weather reports as a form of just like a regular thing he did daily. So and then he was told by whoever that maybe it'd be best if you stopped doing them because he's getting up too early to do them or something like this. As he himself said, he can sleep in a bit more now. So we don't have any idea in reality of why he has stopped before Christmas last year. if he didn't give any reason, so that's obviously part of the whole mystery aspect that Lynch likes to sort of propagate to a degree, I think. And this is going back to a long time, in fact, like when he was making Dune in 1981 82, 83, around the actual filming, in 83, he was telling people not to leak anything. The mystery is all important. The people in the media want to know all about it. Keep everything a secret. This is the big key for him. But, that was the case then. The film came out, and it faced some degree of poor critical reaction, and not an audience necessarily that loved it. But so for me, I don't personally value the whole idea of keeping things secret all the time, especially in this creative sense, because I think you can tell people a certain amount of things. I mean, it would be kind of fun for them to just sort of release things and then tell people things which aren't exactly true. I mean, that would be fun. But yeah, since I was mentioning about Jennifer Lynch, this is actually what she posted back in 2013. I'm putting to rest all stories of Twin Peaks return. This is not happening. So whilst we were on the page Bring Back Twin Peaks with Joe from Chicago, who are, I've mentioned before, Joe Powers, we were kind of doing the Missing Cooper posters, and then these rumors were going around that something was happening after the UCL, I think it was, reunions involving Carl McLaughlin, etc., who held up one of the Missing Cooper posters and things like that. And also, that's where Mark Frost then said Twin Peaks is a continuing story, and that goes for me and David. So that was more than a year before there was any announcement that Twin Peaks would in fact return at the end of October 2014 or so, I think it was. So, this begs the question, and something we've never even had any answer to. Did Jennifer Lynch actually know that her dad and Mark Frost was working on Twin Peaks? Because they already had started it by that point. By about 2011, I think, or 12, they met up at that some famous restaurant called something and Musso's in Hollywood, and started, discussing ideas. Like we've got to have Mr. C in it, and he can punch people in the face and their head explodes, or that kind of idea, basically. And so it's like, why on earth would Jen Lynch release this kind of thing? It's crazy. It's who's heard of this kind of thing before with any other director? People knew that this new, just to use a completely irrelevant, but just as an example, the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, if people didn't know that had been filmed, and then in a week's time, it'd have to be this today or something, they just said, okay, it's coming out in a week, and people never knew about it. I imagine then that it might have got on a bit more of a critical boost than the sort of response to it, which has been, very 50-50. Yeah, I would agree with you, Adamo, as well. I think it's a good point. Like, Lynch has got to have been doing something. We know that he's written like all these scripts called either Unrecorded Night or Hysteria. So, he's written them, and they're actually copyrighted. So, he wants to film things. The main thing he said is that, he's older now, and so therefore it's about having the energy to want to be able to film a series, as he's often said he wants to do. a continuing story. He seems to be more interested in that than just doing like, a 2-hour film or something. But if Twin Peaks does come back, it won't be the same without Angelo, Phantom Cooper says. I think there's no real reason why, if there was to be any further installments of Twin Peaks, that they could use a lot of music that's already in existence, which just hasn't been used in Twin Peaks. They would have enough from the actual music which was composed for the second season, in terms of actual tunes that weren't put on the screen, or variations on tunes, etc. There was so much made back then, with the sort of Annie and Cooper love theme and so forth, which turned into questions Questions in a World of Blue from the If I Walk With Me soundtrack. But I think when you look at the return as well, I think that Badalamenti's music just wasn't used in that sort of less than, probably in terms of screen time or at least music used in the show, I would say it's less than 50% Badalamenti, quite easily. A lot more of it is by Dean Hurley, Johnny Jewel, of course, all the different artists who appear in the Roadhouse, and other tunes, for instance, like My Prayer, which is used a lot by the Platters, used a couple of times at least by, easily more than a couple of times. Yeah, so there's many songs, that were used. I think that if they had some furtherance of Twin Peaks in any form, then it could potentially have more Badalamenti music used in it. And what better a tribute from Lynch to to his longtime friend. So, and up to his, say, his passing and everything with Angelo, then he may have been still writing music, creating things and recording it, but I'm sure he still had plenty of stuff that was just still on hard drives or tapes. In response to Phantom Cooper's question, do I think Richard would come back on Coffee Time to say, "I told you so"? If season 4 does happen, that'd be funny. It's not unthinkable, but I think at the same time, it's not really something that I would be seeking out to do, because I think that Richard might have got a bit to the point where he was just over, putting up with sort of like certain sound recording aspects where everything was slowed down by Josh. I mean, Richard then did that as well. Josh said that he stole some of his techniques, but it's just, no, I think, and I would be using that electronic gizmo thing that used to be promoted by Rolf Harris back in the day, the stylophone thing. And, I wouldn't let Richard get a word in edgeways with that. So, you see, it's not like he would have to be telling me, "I told you so," because I've always been a believer in the idea of Twin Peaks carrying on. I actually felt very much the same as Josh Eisenstadt said he did when he watched The Return back in 2017, and I really thought, like, there's going to be something announced within the next year, and then there'll be something after that coming on, and a follow on to The Return. I don't really call it season 3 because it's not quite divided up like that. It's sort of after 25 years, it seems a bit. It's not really indicative of the content of how The Return is. It's not like it follows on strictly from 25 years anyway, even though it kind of sort of presents itself as if it's going to do that at the beginning. So yeah, I think after Twin Peaks: The Return, you could have Twin Peaks, The Domination, something like that. Twin Peaks: The Heretic, anything along those lines, really. And I would hope it would be both the best of filmmaking and the worst that's pretty much, side by side. In the same way as something like Exorcist 2: The Heretic. You could have scenes of probably bring back Freddy, and then he accidentally makes his, causes himself a great problem to his penis with his green glove and everything, and then James has to help him out with that, take him to hospital and everything, or and that's when James rediscovers his love of his motorbike. And on the way, they meet Wally Brando, and Wally says, similar thing happened to me when I came off the road one time, and I went flying over the handlebars, and part of my penis got caught in the accelerator, and one of my balls. So these are just ideas, and if Lynch or Frost are watching now, or anyone else who wants to give the ideas to them, they can use them. But in terms of like really moving scenarios, I think it would be really good if they could reunite Carl McLachlan, Michael Onkean somehow. They could gather all the Bookhouse boys back together. Then just have, a group meeting with Wally Brando and people like that. Freddie, James Hurley, some of the, the members of the Backstreet Boys could come even. And then I think people would be like crying and just going, this is beautiful. So yeah, if people want to go with those ideas and like them, just give me a thumbs up, please. That's all that matters, really. So if it's in caps by Jennifer Lynch, then that indicated that it must have been true to her at the time, but also that she must have been writing it and saying it as she was typing it, and sort of yelling, basically. But I know at one time she was addicted to Monster energy drinks and that kind of stuff, so I don't think she is anymore. She's gone towards a more kind of clean living way now. But that could explain some of it. I'm not even joking about the energy drinks. She did do a post about how much energy drinks she was having and stuff, and I was concerned. But it was her choice. If she's addicted to energy drinks, then if she goes near the Mountain Dew, then it's her, she's risking her ass. Josh is such a good lad. Richard is way too uptight for his own good. Yeah, I think that you have to bear in mind sometimes just the people have different perspectives based on maybe their age and all that. I think, Josh is like very unable to sort of restrain his tendency to be, taking the piss basically a lot. And it can get a bit wearing sometimes when you're a very respectable, respectable, respectful, decent person like me, and I don't enjoy it always. I'll say that. Well, the thing is, Gary, the trouble is we've had like reports that something has been spotted filming. Lynch has written all these things. He could be doing everything on a much more sort of private, low scale than anything before. So as a way of, getting around the idea of a big production, which is going to be more tiring, like The Return was, and obviously, keeping the budget smaller. But then at the same time, we get people saying nothing is happening. So we'd have no idea. It could be another 5 years and there's nothing will have happened. So it's just bizarre, really, the whole thing. Adamo is saying, I'm hoping on him working on a feature titled Judy because a backstory to it all is required. Yeah, I know, but there's this guy called Mario Mastroianni, obviously, possibly Italian, and he was writing to that Martha who I was commenting, how do you know this kind of stuff or whatever? Show me your crystal ball. He was writing all this stuff about the, origin of Jowday and going back to all these different myths and things like this. And she was saying, how wonderful it is that you've read all of this stuff. But she says, I don't think any of that will give you any indication of what the meaning of Jowday is or Judy. And I don't think that Lynch would do a film called Judy because it's too, for him anyway, for his style and everything, he tends to not be quite so just like laying it all out on a platter. He doesn't come out kind of to the kitchen table and then just say, hey, check this out, and slap his meat on the table and say, well, what should we do tonight? What should we cook tonight? Phantom Cooper claims, I love taking the piss, as you say, LOL. I think really, you may have a point, but at the same time, you're completely wrong. And I think with me, I am 100% serious, really, I would say. There's just an element of not so much taking the piss as often I just don't understand why a lot of people connected to the sort of Lynch world as such and his productions, etc., why they're so secretive and sort of misleading as well. Like, for instance, that comment from Jennifer Lynch. I know it's 10 years ago, and I just imagine myself, say, in David Lynch's position, and say I had such like a hot piece of ass like Twin Peaks on my hands, hot property, I mean, not a hot piece of ass, and it's I'd like say to people, if I was doing maybe some kind of tweet, or if I'd been doing those weather reports, I'd probably just do another video every week or something, just saying, hi guys, I've been doing a video. I've been out making some stuff in Hollywood and filming. Can't tell you what it is, but I had a nice slice of cherry pie this morning. Yeah, I don't want to tell you any more about that, but just make up your mind, really. And do you know what I had with it? A really nice cup of black coffee. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I don't know. Thanks for tuning in. The weather's not too bad, but I'm not doing the weather reports right now. Okay. Uh, yeah, and by the way, if you're wondering why Christabel, my friend and part-time lover, isn't that a song? Part-time lover. Yeah. She's not been on social media from around the same kind of time in a general sense, not the exact date, like before Christmas, certainly, as me. So, maybe you need to think about that as well, don't you? Yeah. So, in life, as I've said before, as myself, I'm David Lynch, the film director, okay? Like, basically, everything out there, we're detectives, and we're like going, oh, I wonder what happened there when we're going out. Say like we're in the shop and we see an apple on the floor near where the apples are. You go over, you pick it up, and then you start, eyeing it, and you go, or you take a photo of it with your phone. And you go, I wonder how this apple. What the hell happened here? Why is it on the floor next to the other apples, but they're on the shelf? And I mean, for Lynch, he would probably make a whole film out of that or something, or at least a whole scene. Like in the same, that scene with Dr. Amp, Jacoby, and Nadeem, where he says, I saw you on your all fours in a supermarket and you were trying to find a potato. That was obviously insinuating that Dr. Amp, because he'd been living out in the woods and everything, is not a part of society anymore, really, if he ever was, wanting to do it doggy style with Nadine. And that's what, made her march up the street with a golden shovel. So that's what the real meaning of shoveling yourself out of the shit means. Penetrating Nadine from behind. So yeah, Phantom Cooper, if it did sound like I was taking the piss, that was not taking the piss. That's a good clue as to my intent. I'm like I said, I'm very serious and actually quite a shy person. It's sometimes it is embarrassing just how shy I am. Really, I feel a little bit like Morrissey at times, but am I wrong in thinking that when Diane sees her double while waiting in the car, that girl represents Linda? Well, I don't know. I've never really thought about it in that sense. I think it was indicative of how a lot of, if you look at it on a grander scale, perhaps, I sort of see Diane having a double, regardless of her being a tulpa or whether that's true or not. Diane was always unseen, in the original Twin Peaks. So I would imagine many people might think, once they've seen her in the return, I wish she'd remained unseen, because she was telling everyone to F off. So I think there's an element of that. Like, it's part of the whole thing of the return, is quite simply this idea of the return of the repressed or the return of trauma, and how, if you are traumatized, if you are seriously depressed, then you might be liable to telling everybody to F off. in the same sense, you might act like Sarah Palmer. You know, not sure about acting like Mr. C because he's an exaggerated character, but definitely elements of that kind of thing. And so much of the entirety of The Return is very numbed and this sort of just crazy violence and everything. And I feel like Lynch wants to abstractly portray how things may feel to somebody who's severely depressed. And you only have to look at, say, the mother in the scene, you know, where it's the drug addled mother with the boy who's just sort of wandering around outside and everything, and then nearly gets blown up. So and everything seems really just meaningless in a way, like with Marion, you know, and her being beaten up by Richard, and yet she's the most pie loving, you know, pleasant person you could imagine, really, within the town, in this incarnation of it anyway. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like Cooper and Diane, and I mean, for me, I think that the only real scene we get of a Cooper that is fully uh, realized and fully assimilated, or whatever you want to call it, coherent, is the part where he's standing outside of Glastonbury Grove, and Diane says, "Is this really you, Cooper?" And she sounds like herself as well. And in that shot as well, everything looks sort of this glowing kind of woods ambience that sort of reminds you of the Twin Peaks of old, if you know what I mean. As do the scenes when they go to colour of Cooper when he tries to take Laura to a different place, you know, to take her away from where she would be murdered. Yeah, I think that the entire idea of Cooper being evil and Cooper being possessed and all of this kind of thing, he embodies all of these different experiences of trauma that these women have had within the incredibly abstract story that we see in The Return. And I mean, personally, I don't believe that Cooper himself, or in the guise of Mr. C, for instance, who I mean, obviously, I don't see Mr. C as being someone in the real world. I don't see Cooper as having actually raped Audrey or Diane. It's more just, I don't know, it's just so much mystery, really, that it seems intended that we'll never really understand it properly. Because there's no reasoning to think that you know, Cooper would suddenly be this evil force. Certainly not in the same kind of way as Leyland, you see, you know. And, you know, in terms of when you look at the whole idea of Monica Bellucci saying, "But who is the dreamer?" and speaking to Gordon Cole in his Paris dream, and he says, "But Cooper was there, but I couldn't see his face." That seems to be about the biggest clue that the dreamer is Cooper, in the sense that he's sort of like hiding within the dream by not showing his face. Rather than me thinking that, say, Gordon Cole is the dreamer, for instance. I think that Gordon Cole is inside Cooper's dream, you know, just in the same way that Laura was in Cooper's dream in the original show. And Cooper was in Laura's dream. So you see, there can be two different dreamers, but they're in the same dream, basically. So the question that Monica Bellucci is posing is slightly misleading in the terms of, but who is the dreamer? Because there can be more than one dreamer, but they're basically having the same dream, but from their own perspectives. Just in the same way that we experience, day-to-day life, in some sense, it's obviously colored by our own perspectives or emotions, but obviously it's not quite, in dreams, we're having abstract ideas and everything, which change according to the dreamer. I just realized I wasn't doing ASMR there, so. Yeah, I think that Mr. C is more of a expression of some kind of something connected, especially to the darkness of the woodsman and the explosion and all of that kind of things and the electricity, because it's made quite clear that Mr. C can travel through electricity when he's in the convenience store and when he comes back through the telephone and all of that. He's more just like this kind of evil or ambivalent power, really. In the same way that Bob was, to some extent, but Bob was far more fierce and animalistic than Mr. C. It's quite interesting on Reddit that someone's posted, actually, if you look at the entire script for Fire Walk with Me, there's this whole part in the convenience store that was included in the deleted scene, of course, where there's the animal life and we have descended from thin air, why not be composed of nothing but atoms or something like that, and boneless as well is a word in there, and all sorts of this kind of stuff. And basically all of that is word by word, like taken out of this book by Madame Blavatsky, who was one of the theosophical writers, I mean, that may not have been all from Lynch. It could have been Bob Engels. So, oh my God. Sorry about that. I'm getting rang by some fake person on WhatsApp. Hope it's not Mr. C anyway. Well, if Cooper was having dreams with Laura, then why can't Gordon Cole have dreams with Monica Bellucci, the actual Monica Bellucci, since she's mentioned within, his dialogue? She's not playing a character played by Monica Bellucci. This is actually his dream concerning her. And I think the idea that that Albert and Tammy might react a bit sort of laughing a bit about the notion of him having a dream about this beautiful actress, could sort of mislead us into thinking it's actually just Gordon's, own blue dream, well, not blue, but fantastical dream. Blue dream. Ah, dear. So yeah, I think as it was, like, the nature of the scene that we saw within the dream, in terms of her being there in France and all of that, and that being relative to Gordon Cole's actual, may have been in Paris or something like this. I mean, that was literally filmed just near where Lynch was working in a studio himself, the IDEM studio, I believe, and where he was actually having a show as well of his works. But regardless of that, it would suggest that, Gordon had some kind of connection to Paris and may have even had some connection to Monica Bellucci. Sounds pretty likely, Phantom Cooper, in terms of how dreams work. You know, if say I'd never been outside of my where I live, then I would have dreams just about where I live usually. But we would also, if that was the case, for instance, you'd probably end up dreaming about sort of visuals and places you'd seen in films or you'd seen in pictures. I often dream of places that I've been, but of course they don't seem to be very much, certainly not very similar to the actual place. They're always sort of elaborated and made into a more um, lovely kind of place, really, rather than the reality, which might not be necessarily quite as great. Like I've had dreams where I, go back to the old town where I grew up and everything, and the cinema is kind of reopened and has been lavish, or well, not lavishly, but quite well recreated with a grand screen and sort of auditorium, all this kind of idea. But then I've also had a dream, which I mentioned many times, but I know it's tedious, like of the idea of someone doing a remake of the Twin Peaks movie, Fire Walk with Me. So, and then in the dream, I'm trying to convince people that it actually happened, that this film existed. That whole idea is quite an interesting one in a way. And I think that they're playing around with that idea of what is true and what isn't, and what do we actually remember, in the same way as Laura basically covered up her being molested by her father and well, so on, since she was young. And this idea of covering up the reality, the harsh reality, with a sort of fantasy to a coping mechanism. This is not something that I've personally exactly experienced in any way like that, but I think apparently I think this kind of thing can happen. If someone has such a traumatic experience, then they can sort of and especially if it starts at a young age, then they kind of retreat into a sort of a fantasy as the only way of shielding themselves and coping. It's quite crazy, the way, oh, well, unbelievable, the way the brain shields itself as well. Judy is the dreamer. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's possible, and I don't discount anything. But since Jowday seems to be an extreme negative force, as opposed to a um, personified, for instance, that almost makes the whole Jowday idea into something supernatural. In terms of this negative force, it's quite obvious in The Return how everything pretty much throughout the entire 18 parts seems quite negative, in terms of its effects, just the nature of the drama we see unfolding, and then also the way the characters interact with each other. With the exception of Dougie, perhaps. I think that Dougie was in so much of it because he kind of weighs, he balances out, this negativity in some sense. But well, anyway, it's pretty late now, so I'll have to bid you good night, and thank you for listening to me on this special ASMR broadcast. Appreciate the discussion and everyone in the chat. I wish you lots of love, a good weekend, and hope to see you soon. Bye for now. See you in the trees.